Hi, MK.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. The kids are in bed.
Nice.
Yeah, they go to bed early. It's nice. Mm-hmm.
Welcome, everybody. Just a reminder to mute your microphones and turn your videos off as you log in.
But it's still illegal. Apricot seeds. My cousin distributes California raisins. You want to lock him up too? If it appears on the FDA's list of unapproved substances. There is nothing in my client's treatment that is not sold in every health food store in the country. Penal law is very clear. If you sell apricot seeds as a treatment for cancer, you've committed a crime. So, want to slap her on the wrist now? Your client is looking at jail time. Sure. I have it.
Okay, everybody who's just coming in, just a reminder to mute your microphones and turn off your videos. I agree, Monica. Great to see everybody. Glad to hear, Lisa. Okay, we're just gonna a few more minutes and make sure everybody is on. So anyone who's come on since the last time I said it, just make sure that you've muted your microphones and turn your videos off. Still have people entering the waiting room, so we're just gonna give it one more minute. Okay. All right, I think most of us are in. Welcome everybody again to our third Coaches Corner webinar. So we are very excited to have a huge turnout again tonight. Not surprising, we have Dr. Judy Goss on. So I know we are very excited to spend our Coaches Corner with Judy tonight. We wanted to provide a good opportunity for lots of questions and answers towards the end. So we will have some chats with Judy and then we will open up the floor for questions and answers as we have in the past. So before we get started, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who is going to say a few words. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Amanda, and hello, coaches. So excited to see the number of people who have joined on the call tonight. And believe me, I am well aware that you came here to talk with Judy tonight and not with me. But we wanted to take the opportunity to give you an update on what's going on and what we are hearing out there with the government about how they are proceeding with getting ready to get back to skating. So I just want to fill you in on that. And first of all, I did also want to start off with everybody here. I think that you've seen the communications, but I want to remind everyone that the Skate Canada AGM is coming up. So if you have not signed up to attend and to exercise your right to vote, please do. So I want to remind everybody to go look for that. And also, if you could talk with your clubs about making sure that they have signed up. Obviously, it's a bit of a different format this year. They'll be doing that meeting virtually, but we want to make sure that you guys take the opportunity to be there. Okay, so on to updates in Ontario. The first thing that I want to let you know about is what we're hearing with regards to arena openings and what we know about timelines. Right now from the ministry, and believe me, I ask them every day, the state of emergency order that was just extended until June 2nd is crystal clear that recreational facilities are not allowed to open while the state of emergency is underway. So it's very clear from that emergency order that all indoor recreation facilities are closed. So we know that rumors have been swirling, and people may have heard different, and you may have heard that special exceptions were made for professional sport. So I want to be clear, it was only made for pro sport teams. So the Ottawa Senators and the Toronto Raptors can send one player in for training. That's it. So no other kind of sport is allowed, at least until June 2nd. And you need to consider, if you do by chance hear about anything that's open at this time, you really need to consider the reason the emergency order is still on is because it's not considered safe yet. So not safe for you, not safe for the skaters. Certainly there would be no insurance coverage, and certainly it'd be liable to be fined if a bylaw officer came by. So I know it's we're all getting anxious to get going again, but while the state of emergency is on, clearly no skating. Okay. I also want to talk about how we are advocating to make sure that we are able to get you more information about when amateur sport can restart. The simple fact of the matter is that we do not have more information on that yet in Ontario. We are advocating for that to happen every day. We are advocating to get guidelines for that. We have been in the discussions with the ministry almost daily. We are working with all of the other provincial sport organizations. As you can imagine, they are equally anxious as we are to start to understand about what will be allowed at what phase of reopening. And we actually have a submission going into the government that's been signed by 50 of our fellow professional sport organizations, and that is going in tomorrow. And as you can imagine, I don't think 2 PSOs have ever signed anything before, let alone 50. So we're hoping that that will be impactful. I'm also a member of one of the minister's subcommittees for returning to amateur sport. So we are as in the loop as we can be, and we are advocating for you, we're advocating for the clubs, and we're advocating to get information for the safe return of sport. And as soon as we hear anything, we will absolutely let you know, okay? I'm going to now turn it back over to Amanda and to Judy, but I will come back, I'm simultaneously in another meeting, but I will come back at the end of the call in case anybody has any specific questions that you'd like to ask me. I will come back and be available. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it back over to you, Amanda, and to you, the far more interesting presenter than me tonight, Judy. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Lisa. So we are very excited, as mentioned before, to have Dr. Judy Goss with us tonight. Dr. Judy has been a mental performance consultant for over 25 years. She provides mental skills training, program management, and leadership to athletes. She offers consulting, workshops for athletes, coaches, as well as parents. Dr. Goss has attended over 14 Olympic, Paralympic, Pan Am, and World Championships with athletes and teams, and has been a huge part of Skate Ontario's high performance sport initiative for many years. So welcome, Judy. We're very excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
We wanted an opportunity to chat a little bit with you and ask you a few questions, and then open the floor up to our coaches to ask some questions that they may have thought of over the past couple of days.
Great.
So let's start off with, what do you feel is the most important thing that coaches can do during this time?
Well, right now it's a really awesome time to be able to reflect. So to think back to what's happened in the past year, or what have you been doing for the past, couple of years, what has worked well, what hasn't worked well, and what are you going to change moving forward? I've said to many coaches, not just, skating coaches, but this is a great time to kind of hit the reset button and to really start up with a little bit of a deliberate, kind of thoughtful approach in terms of some things that you may want to change or do differently.
Awesome. And it's neat because we may not love these times, but we don't have this opportunity to do something like that often, right? Where we can set that, hit that reset button and kind of put some thought into what we're doing. So that's an awesome idea. I think it's great for everybody to be able to do that, for sure. How would you suggest coaches help their skaters manage with stress, anxiety, and uncertainty during these times? The kids are feeling it for sure.
Well, sure. And I'm sure that a lot of the people have also kind of, as we'd say, ebbed and flowed. Some have probably, had some, different emotions, maybe at the beginning, maybe a little sense of relief when they have a little time off. Then they start getting anxious, worrying, bored. So everybody's going to respond to this kind of situation as a little bit differently. And we have to recognize that, we can't avoid struggles and adversity, even when we're trying to achieve a goal. And I think one thing that we want the coaches to think about is to watch their own, as I call it, a little bit of their life load. So how much are you carrying on yourself? Physically, mentally, emotionally, you may be now, worried about your elderly parents catching this, getting sick, living far away from you or whatever. You may be doing more homeschooling at home. There's a lot of stress on you. So we want to make sure that you're managing yourself well, because the better that we manage ourselves, the more, the better we are for others, as we might say, right? And you want to recognize that what you focus on does, determine your emotions. If you're watching CNN, all day long and thinking about all the bad things, you're going to have some negative emotions. That's pretty natural. So we want to watch out for how, the coaches are feeling in managing this stress. And then we want to also remember that their relationship with their athletes, that coach-athlete relationship is foundational, right? So the greater relationship and contact that you can have with some of your athletes, especially ones that are not maybe managing it well, the better off they're going to be, right? Because we know that one of the greatest, advantages to us is our, need for and our desire to have social support. So I've encouraged, a lot of the athletes that are kind of, not in a great mood or a great place, reach out and talk to your teammates. I mean, you are really used to seeing them every single day. You're used to seeing your coach every single day. That's a normal relationship for you. So if it's not happening, you're going to feel different. So really reach out and pay attention to that. So, and that's much more than just maybe a little bit of a text. Maybe it is a FaceTime or a Zoom call or something like that, that just engages them a little bit more. And to help manage that little bit of uncertainty is to start to plan moving forward. Okay, we don't know. Lisa gave us some good information. June 2nd, nothing's going to happen before then. But what can we do just moving forward? And we want to make sure that some people have taken a break. So if you've taken a break, or you're going to take, a break for the next, 2 weeks, then we could start with some, dry land kind of, off ice kind of activities to build up in case you're able to get back on the ice. Just start planning, because just sitting there with nothing is not going to help. So we want to encourage them to plan And we make plans anyways. We make plan A, plan B, plan C all the time. So training's uncertain, competition's uncertain. This is uncertain as well.
Absolutely. I like that idea about having the skaters, encouraging the skaters to connect with their coaches. A lot of the times that is who the skaters look up to, and having that connection with them is going to be something that's going to calm their fears. I think a big part of the uncertainty is that we have no dates, right? We don't know, anything like that. So connecting, the coaches continuing to connect with their skaters is definitely a way that we can keep their fears at bay a little bit anyways, and their concerns for sure. So we are all hopeful that we're starting to get ready back on the ice soon. Soon is our hope. What kind of mental skills would you suggest for our skaters to prepare them to get back on the ice?
Well, this is it's a great opportunity to spend some time working on the mental skills. So, we could certainly encourage them to start using any kind of, visualization or imagery. They can use that in a variety, just thinking about skills, walking through their programs again as they start to kind of build back into it. We certainly want to kind of consider some emotional management. So, I would suspect that as they get back on the ice, there may be a little bit of frustration, happening, or nervousness happening, coming back, trying some new skills. So being able to calm themselves would be very beneficial. So learning some deep breathing, some focusing techniques. There's lots of opportunity on the phone, on your phone. There's lots of apps out there that can help them in terms of breathing. And I used to not encourage them to use their phone, because I was always thinking, if they're standing there, just before they go on and they really want to kind of take some deep breaths to calm themselves, they need to be able to do it on their own. But the phone does encourage practice. Okay, I know I have an Apple Watch. It tells me to breathe all the time, right? Reminds me to do it.
Yep.
Plus, it can track it. It can provide them with information about how they are doing with that skill. And, it is just the practice of the skill. So anything that encourages them in a different way to try it, I'm for it. I would certainly encourage, any dance teams or pair teams to work a little bit, as we'd say, on communication. Sometimes just building a plan, thinking about what they want to work on, just any kind of, communication just kind of reinforces what they need to be talking about. And at this point in time, they should be not stressed or worried or frustrated about training, right? They should be able to relate and talk about things, maybe even provide each other support. One might be a little anxious or stressed, the other might be fine. So that's a good way to kind of build that relationship, right? So, any of that kind of stuff, practicing those would probably be beneficial.
Absolutely. I know that everybody's anticipating that we're entering into a different type of season from what we're used to. So things might look different. Our event schedule may be different. Training might be different. Do you have any suggestions on how coaches can plan for the season, or different approaches maybe that they can take to some of the changes that we're anticipating seeing?
Well, I think it's always a great opportunity, and I kind of like this because, skating's schedule is like steadfast. It never changes, right? I work with a lot of sports. You never know what the heck's going on with them, whereas skating is very clear when things are happening, right? So I think it helps us all have to think a little bit differently about it. And it also helps us think much more in a process-oriented way as opposed to just the outcome, okay? A lot of times, we're so regimented in the calendar that we're always looking at the calendar as opposed to looking where the athlete or the skater is actually at, right? And I'll get skaters that, are struggling or have an injury or just coming back or have been ill or whatever, and they're like, but I have Minto, or I have sectionals, or I have whatever coming up. And, I always say, what's the purpose of the competition? Like each competition or each, benchmark, as we might say, should have a purpose. And sometimes the purpose is not to go and get your best technical score, you've ever gotten. It has other purposes. And I think that kind of can bring us back to, you know, these younger athletes. What do they really need to develop and learn this year in this kind of strange environment as it might be, right? So I think we need to be a little bit patient in what we're doing. I know that there's no rush because there's no competition coming up, right? Everything's kind of, you know, as we'd say, been canceled. So I think that it provides us with a little bit more about that individual focus and also that kind of process-oriented focus. What do I need to work on?
Absolutely. Something that you know, that was brought up from one of our coaches, which we thought was a great how can we continue to foster their resilience as the resilience of our coaches?
Okay, well, you know, I like talking about resilience only because it's quite the buzzword out there these days. And, you know, there is some misunderstanding, as you might say, about what is resilience, okay? So resilience is not something that you either have or you don't have. It's very context specific. And it's really important to realize that it's really an interaction between the individual and the environment, okay? So we have an individual, and some individuals certainly have personal qualities, as we might say, that kind of make them less prone to the harmful effects of stress and adversity. But we have to look at those personal qualities because those are also influenced by the environment. And I think that's one thing that the coaches can really think about coming back, because you know, we're entering where there's going to be some challenges, as we might say. It's a little bit different. People feel that they got to get back doing the things. And so we want an environment that is high in challenge, which it will be, but also high in support, okay? We call that a facilitative environment. If an environment's high in challenge and low in support, they term that an unrelenting environment, okay? So I would ask the coaches like to think about what does a high challenge, high support environment look like to them on a daily basis? And what are the kinds of things that they're going to hear or see or feel in an environment like that? Because we, you know, part of dealing with being resilient and dealing with adversity is it's not actually the adversity, it's actually our belief about that situation, that adversity, right? So it's really moving, you know, I know everybody's heard about, you know, the growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset. Well, this kind of takes the step a little bit further to a challenge mindset. And it's not just about positive thinking. In fact, it's not at all about positive thinking. It's more about recognizing that you can look at the situation in like an alternative way, that it is a challenge. So some of the things that the coaches can watch out for, okay, is some of the ways that the athletes may talk about these things. You know, if I come back, I'm struggling with my double axel or whatever you're struggling with, you know, they tend to maybe, you know, kind of catastrophize. I'm never going to get it. This is never going to work, okay? You need to kind of be that rational person, put it in perspective. You know, some athletes are very black and white thinking. It is or it isn't, right? Sometimes we overgeneralize. So there are ways that we think about things, we think about challenges and adversity, which makes it hard for us to cope, as we might say, okay? So coaches could also, you know, really be specific again about goal setting. The one thing that I often find, and I tell this when I speak to skaters about setting goals, I find the summertime, they are somewhat unrealistic in their goal setting. Oh, you know, let's say summer school starts, you know, beginning of July, Thornhill or whatever they call it now is, you know, mid-August. And they're like, oh, I'm going to learn my double axel this summer. And I'm like, okay, so 6 weeks you're going to learn that jump? And they're like, well, I've got lots of time on the ice. I'm like, yeah, I know you do. Doesn't mean you're going to actually spend that time working on that jump, but 6 weeks is probably a pretty short time to learn a new jump like a double axel, right? So we need to be a little bit more realistic and thoughtful in that kind of goal setting, right? You can also help the athletes if they're, a little bit frustrated, anxious about the jumps, building that kind of self-awareness to notice how they respond when they're frustrated. Notice how they respond when they're anxious, right? Help them build that self-awareness. Well, how are you feeling? Like, what are you thinking about? Where's your focus? Those kinds of questions. And also help them build that little bit of that pre-jump routine. How do I prepare myself every time so that I can have, or at least, take the best jump possible? So does that give a few kind of concepts there?
Absolutely, yes. I before we move on, I wanted to touch base on a little bit on something that you mentioned a little bit earlier about should they be working in a break. You talked about breaks. We know a number of our coaches and a number of our athletes are doing a lot of Zoom classes right now. Are we worried about burnout at all? If we get
sure.
So if you can, yeah, absolutely. So Judy, if we can touch on that a little bit, that would be great.
Well, and it's kind of hard just to speak in general because I know there's a variety of different levels and whatnot, but it is an active, we should have some kind of, as I've said to most athletes, active rest. So that means I'm doing other things, but I am resting from my sport, right? So maybe I'm riding my bike. Maybe, I am doing a little bit of yoga. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe I'm outside on, the driveway with my brother shooting baskets. Okay. We know that that kind of cross training and, doing other things is good for, first of all, your body and your mind. Also to prevent overuse injuries and whatnot. So I say to most coaches, like, make sure they have a break because I want them clawing at the doors to come back to the rink. Like, that's what we can at least look forward to, is them really excited to get back to see their friends, get into a routine and get back on the ice because, that's what they generally love. So just think how much fun it would be to coach kids that are so excited to see you and be on the ice, right?
Absolutely. Yes. That's the best way to have them coming back for sure. So that's a great goal for all the coaches to ensure that their kids, their skaters are in that position. We've got some great questions coming in already. So Judy, if you're good to turn over. So a question about how to best blend fun with achievement for some of our younger skaters who might not be on the high performance path quite yet, but they're on the provincial or local path.
So, well, I would challenge those coaches just to think back to the last, year or whatever. What were the activities, the skills, the, whatever you did in your training session that kids really responded to? Which were the ones that kids didn't really respond to? Like, it's certainly, you can usually tell when kids are engaged and having fun. So go back and think around those kinds of things. What did you do on those days? And I think coaches are pretty good at looking when things really went well. They're not as great as thinking about when things didn't go so well, right?
Right.
So any way that you can insert fun into it, because when they're eager and they're in a good headspace, meaning I'm positive because I am having fun, they're generally more able to manage their emotions. They're generally more able, I know it's hard to believe sometimes, to manage their focus. And then if they can do those two things, they're generally going to move forward in terms of skill development.
Absolutely. And those are the skaters at that level that we need to keep engaged at this time. It's so important to keep our local and provincial path skaters engaged in order to ensure that everyone returns to skating and wants to return to skating. So great question. Thank you for that, Paul. I have another question here. So any suggestions to help younger athletes understand visualization? So this coach typically uses examples of watching themselves on a video. Is there anything else you can suggest for visualization?
Sure. There's lots of lots of, different little, things you can do with them. I'll give you an example. Here's one that I always do with the kids. I just say to them, everybody shut your eyes for a moment. Imagine yourself, you're standing on the side of a road. You look down to the right and you see a man and a horse walking towards you. The man and the horse get closer. The man and the horse pass you by, right? So I haven't given much description. Everybody can shut their eyes and create, an image of a man and a horse. But then we kind of talk about it. Was the horse black? Was the horse brown? Was the horse white? Was the man riding the horse? Was the man walking beside the horse? Was, he, in a cart? Did you smell the horse as the horse went by? Did you hear the horse walk along the road? Was it a paved road? Was it a dirt road? So we can build all those descriptions, and kids start to use their senses and start to kind of understand how to create an image like that. So you can ask them to imagine their, bedroom. Look around the bedroom. What do you see? Everybody sees their bedroom all the time. They can really, really easily create an image of that. So then we go and we say, what color is the arena? What color are the boards? What color is the change room? And, you'll have long fights with all the skaters about exactly what the color is. So you can create those kinds of images. Then, lie down on your back just before you're warming up, and, imagine you're in your basement, or lying in your bed and your nice duvet's covered you and it's nice and warm, or you're sitting on a sandy beach. So it's really just kind of leading them through it and making sure that they engage all their senses, right? So I would start around skating before I go directly to skating, right? Similar to, athletes or skaters are really good at imagining the programs as they certainly get older. We do a lot of that preparation before you actually get on the ice. So imagine yourself standing out, outside with your, your guards still on, and you're by your coach, and then you take your guards off and you skate around, and the pre-announcement kind of thing. Just building those different pictures helps them to understand.
Awesome. Thank you. We had a coach who mentioned that she has read a good amount of Terry Orlick books over the years, and she was wondering if you have any other author and book suggestions related to the psychological side of the sport, or of sport in general.
Well, you know what? There's like hundreds of books out there.
Yeah.
But there's one by Gary Mack that's called Mind Gym. That's really kind of short and sweet and easy. It's been around for a number of years. It's not like, a lot of the psychology, especially in the mental skills training, has changed even since Terry was around, right? Certainly lots of other research and other kind of aspects, but just in that general mental skills, there's lots of books out there. Anything that kind of moves you, moves you towards something that's sports specific. And I would even suggest, and I do suggest for most athletes, is not always, if I have a golfer, don't always read a book about golf. Like maybe read something about baseball or something. They're similar, but trying to get you to think outside the box on how different aspects might apply to you is good. And since there's really nothing specific to skating, there's a couple that are kind of old, you can almost get any book.
Yeah, very great. Thank you. Somebody made a suggestion, Igniting the Third Factor by Dr. Peter Jensen. Yeah, and he has other books as well, other than just that one. One of our coaches, Lisa, had a great idea. She said she had her skaters write down their fears and they ripped them up. The papers that they wrote their fears on, it was great, and the kids were really engaged in it. So something fun to do with the kids. Any of our coaches on who want to ask questions, you can either type them in or you can feel free to unmute yourself too. We'd love to hear directly from you guys. Not sure how that's going to work if a bunch of people decide to unmute themselves at the same time, but we will try. So at this time, any coaches who want to ask questions, the floor is open. So please ask us any questions, ask Judy any questions that you might have. And we have a question, was the book Mind Gym by Gary Mack?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Just gonna go through our questions here. Another way a coach suggested to help kids with fears is to have them create a box, put their fears in it, and lock them away. So that's a great tool as well.
But we also want to recognize that it's natural to have fears, and we want to make sure that kids realize that it's moving forward and being courageous is something that you're moving forward even with your fears, right? So I think that sometimes we feel that we could get rid of all their fears and they shouldn't have them, and that's not true. Some people think athletes, or the elite athletes are fearless, as we'd say. No, they just fear a little less, right?
Absolutely, and we want them to feel that their fears are warranted, and fear it, being fearful is a real feeling, and some coping on how to deal with the fears is a good way of addressing them as well. Okay, so thanks, Chris. That's a good idea. Actually, if you click the participants button, you can raise your hand if you want to raise your hand and unmute yourself to ask questions. So
I have one here from David. Judy,
yes,
as a mother of a high performance athlete, how does she cope in her sport? How is she engaged in continuing her journey, and how does your expertise? Oh, are you talking about my daughter? Who knows how she continues to use my expertise, cry on my shoulder some of the time, right? Let's see.
I have a question up here. How do I not feel guilty for not having lessons for my kids every week like I hear other coaches are doing?
I
I
wouldn't.
think that's great.
I would say that if you still engage your kids with a conversation, with just touching base with them, seeing how they are, and ask them what they are doing, okay? You do not have to lead them and have lessons every time. We do want the athletes to be, as we'd say, somewhat of a self-starter. Some of them are fine starting things and can carry through and meet, whatever expectations. Other kids will struggle with that. But it doesn't mean that we just let them. We, encourage them and try to get them to at least build, as we'd say, some good habits towards that.
Absolutely. This is a great point one of our coaches just brought up about helping skaters who are fearful of getting sick as we transition back to group activities. That's very valid. That is something that some of the kids will be fearful of for sure.
Well, and I think that just helping them to name that kind of emotion that they're feeling. Okay, so some of them, will feel anxious because they're scared, right? So how can we help them, feel less anxious? What would they like you to do? What could we do as a group that might, not that there's going to be big groups there, but if they're on the ice with, 3 or 4 other skaters, what can we do to ensure that, we've all taken necessary precautions, right? So there might need to be a few procedures put in place for each little individual group based on what these skaters may feel would work best for them.
Absolutely. Okay, so another question that came in. So two more that we can ask more than that, but another 2 that I see here. So we discussed the lower level or the local level and provincial level. How do we prepare the higher level athletes when we don't know exact times? But if we get exact times, what does 4 weeks out look like? So let's say, fingers crossed, 4 weeks from now, we're stepping on the ice. What does the next 4 weeks look like for our athletes?
Well, and I think that Skate Canada did put out, as we called it, a reintegration document. So
yes,
it's kind of like, how to build up to get back on the ice, all right? And I think that everybody needs to be a little bit more patient. And I think, you know, the slower and steadier that we move, you know, baby steps, you know, will make good progress as we move forward. Like, you know, as I was talking to one skater, and, you know, just not having their foot in their boot for how many weeks, how soft is their skin or their toes, and, you know, blisters and all that kind of stuff. You know, you can get a really bad blister and some, you know, infection, and you're off the ice, right?
Absolutely.
So I really, you know, want to hold the reins on a lot of the athletes in terms of being slow. I work with beach volleyball players. They can't jump around in the sand, right? They can still practice their volleyball, but, you know, jumping in the sand really is different than jumping on pavement, right? So, you know, their knees, their feet, we need to be slow to reintroduce those kinds of things, okay? And, you know, we're in no rush. What are we in a rush for? There are no competitions right yet, and they're not going to schedule a competition so that people do have to rush. That's not good planning. And even for the higher level skaters, this is an opportunity for them to like work on so many other facets of, you know, that impact their performance, you know, that they haven't, right? You know, core
Absolutely.
strength or flexibility or their mental skills or their nutrition, or maybe finishing that online class that they were taking. That's all going to build a sense of accomplishment and also contribute, you know, to them doing well on the ice.
Absolutely. And at Skate Ontario, we have discussed, and we had mentioned a couple times on some of our previous webinars, that we did talk to coaches, and we discussed with them, you know, what an ideal time frame was for the skaters to prepare before they go to an event. So your whole point about there is no rush. We know that it's an 8-week window before ideally skaters would compete after stepping on the ice, you know, and we've listened to those recommendations, and we're going to be following those recommendations. So, you know, there is no rush. That is a great point. The reintegration document from Skate Canada hasn't quite come out yet. It's going to be available soon. And then we're going to sort of tweak it just to suit our provincial level skaters as well at the province level. So you can keep an eye for that reintegration document from Skate Canada, and it should be out shortly. A comment here from Meredith. So I think the worry about there is no rush nationally, but when other countries are back on the ice, there's stress factors on skaters and coaches. So we've had a number of skaters and coaches with that concern. You know, we're not on the ice, but others are. How do we help our skaters manage that?
Well, and I think that realistic, you know, time frame of what they need to do to move forward. Just because, you know, you're on the ice longer does not always aid you, right? You know, you can injure yourself. You can still, you know, push too hard, too fast, right? And let's always keep the well-being of the athlete in mind. Okay, that's the big thing. Is we do not want our stress, and that's the way that coaches need to say, you know, watch what they're thinking, what they're saying, their stress response in terms of rushing the athletes or saying, don't worry, we've got time, we're going to work on this, you can move forward. I mean, obviously, you know, they're at a certain level, and, you know, I always say to athletes, like, it's a similar, like, if I'm at this level and now I'm down here, I want to go and across. And it doesn't work that way. It's a slow, gradual kind of climb as we move forward to where we were, right? And
Absolutely.
we have to be patient. These things are challenges. And it's not like getting back and learning those skills again. And, you know, I'm not saying really relearning, but regaining those skills. Regaining them is a good thing. Like, you know, it's good that you have to kind of work and focus and, you know, build your confidence that way. That's going to carry through, and I think that's important.
Absolutely. I love this question. What are some good tips for us as coaches to make sure we can check ourselves when we get back on the ice, controlling our excitement of ourselves and the skaters, making sure we don't push too hard, don't try too much too soon. It's like the first day of summer school or the first day of back after fall, times 1,000. So how do we as coaches and skaters manage that, or how do we check ourselves as coaches?
Well, and first of all, you need to always be self-aware, you know, as we'd say, emotionally intelligent, understand how your emotions are going to impact others, right? And we want you to bring excitement because that's great. It's, you know, it inspires and helps the athletes. However, just know what your norm is. What is your normal? Okay. So, you know, the kids know how you normally act. It's when you kind of change what you normally do where they're aware of it. So practice planning in terms of what are you going to do for a training session, and really thinking forward with that, saying, and I know it's hard because some athletes are going to come back in good shape, some are going to come back in moderate shape, and some are going to come back in bad shape, right? So you might think through is, let's do a little assessment on them, see how they're doing, and we have to monitor. So I would encourage people to kind of think forward, look back to what they've done in the past, and how have you progressed and managed people as they've come back.
Absolutely. Awesome. We have a question here. We have Lisa who has joined us again. So we're going to ask Lisa to turn her video on, and the three of us will be on together. Thanks. Welcome back, Lisa. We have a question that we thought you might be able to assist with as well. So one of the coaches can see the on-ice scenario being to allow less numbers of skaters on the ice for shorter times to allow skaters equal access. That makes sense, kind of from what we're seeing happening. Can you speak to that at all?
Yes, I would say in general, we are seeing similar information like that from around the world. I think that we are certainly realizing that when we go back, I think it's more than clear to all of us, this is not a delayed start of us doing the same thing that we've done before. This will be us, you know, executing programs in a different way. So we know that we will need to provide, you know, what does that mean? What's that going to look like? How, you know, how many kids, how many coaches, you know, what are some of the other processes? We don't have the guidelines for that yet. We are working on getting the government to give us, you know, what are the, I don't know what to call it, like the goalposts. And then we will work with you. We will work with, you know, we will work with coaches. We will work with, you know, clubs on what will those processes then be to make sure that we can execute skating safely within those overall guidelines. We are certainly, we don't have a date yet for when we will get what I would call the master guidelines, but we are anticipating that in the next couple of weeks, and we're pushing hard for that. And I also want to mention, you know, people talked about, you know, we certainly understand there's going to be a lot of anxiety because people hear that there's other people who are skating. And, you know, as a former coach myself, I understand that constant sense of urgency and worry with your athletes, that you want them to have the best and have every opportunity, and you want that for yourselves too. You know, but I can tell you, when we actually start to look into it, like where are rinks open and where are people actually skating, it's just not as much as we are hearing that it is. You know, even some of the places in Europe, for instance, where rinks had started to open, you know, they're closing back down, and so just a lot easier to say than to do. But you know, we're going to have to be a little bit of have a little bit of patience, and we'll make sure that as soon as we get the information, we come up with those standards for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Dave has raised his hand, so I can see that when that happens, I can see that on my screen, which is awesome. So Dave, can you unmute yourself? We'd love to hear your question.
Hello, everybody. One thing that we've done here in Barrie, we've been proactive with the city of Barrie, and said we are not hockey. Everything that I've read in the news and heard, when they talk about recreation facilities, they use the hockey example and the challenges with hockey, which are very real. And I think as figure skating, as a group of figure skaters, clubs, coaches, and organizations, we do not have some of the challenges that hockey does. We don't throw 10 or 12 or 15 kids on the ice and have them chase a puck and go around pylons. So I would urge everyone to make a connection with your municipalities and say, this is our model. This is what we do.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, David. And, we're also pushing hard, even across the sport groups, even the sports who know they will have a more difficult time with some of their standards, are acknowledging that, this is, we need to worry about safe public health standards. And so there is a full appreciation, and we are pushing hard that all sports are not created equal in that regard. So, we are and we will advocate for exactly what you're talking about, David. So thank you.
Thank you. We have a question here from Jess about planning purposes on how we think this will impact the CanScape program. So we hear you about the concerns for our CanScape program, and we are definitely working on some discussions with coaches and Skate Canada on what that is going to look like. We don't have any information for you yet, but keep an eye out because that's on our radar for sure. And Nita, you're right. We do have some similar challenges with spacing in terms of synchro. Again, we've had a lot of inquiries from synchro clubs, organizations, coaches. It's another one of our concerns. So we are looking to some plans for what that's going to look like, and we will keep you posted as soon as we have any more information on that. We have a few raised hands. Let me see if I can tell. Okay, I can't. Okay, I have a raised hand from Liat. Do you want to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question?
Hi, I think that if we come up with a planned model for reopening and clearly state it as a united front, like golf did, I mean, the only reason they've been able to open golf courses is because they came up with the models, they solved all the issues and the problems, they kind of went around the course and, adapted things. For instance, we usually have our skaters operate the music player or the iPod. I can see, the one parent staying behind the screen and just operating it and allowing only so many kids on the ice, having hand wipes. We need to just be really clear but united as a front across Canada so that it's the same for every province. And then I think we'll have a better success of getting approved for reopening.
And we are, and thank you, Leah. That's absolutely great point. And as you know, in Ontario, our situation is a little bit more serious than it is currently than it is in some of the other provinces, meaning that they're a little bit further ahead than us. So we are regularly in contact with the other sections because some of them have had to start. We have not only had to start to work on these plans, but they've also had to start to submit them to public, to health officials in other provinces. So that will just be hopefully all that much more helpful for us when we get those guidelines that, we'll be ahead with creating those, with having those standards in our hand. And like the second there's somebody to give them to, that we will be ready.
That sounds great. Thank you. I'm in Alberta.
Oh,
cool. Thanks, Liat.
Yeah.
So I would just ask at this time if anybody has any more questions for Judy or for Lisa, please ask them now. You will have the opportunity to ask questions after as part of our survey, as we have done with our other webinars. We are working on a frequently asked questions component to an updated page on our website. So some of these questions that we are finding popular amongst a number of different coaches will be housed on that spot. So we're always looking to add to that. So again, any questions, please feel free to ask now, and you can always ask after by emailing myself or through the survey. Judy, would you be willing to do Zooms like this for athletes and working on breathing skills and different components like that?
Sure.
Awesome. Yeah, and something that came out of our webinar 2 weeks ago was about some resources and how, you know, the coaches are looking for various resources that they can use during this time and after. And this definitely, that's a great question, Karen. Thank you for bringing that up. It's one of the resources we could add to our list that we're putting together. You know, that's something we can add to that as well. So thank you for that. How can we contact Judy? So Judy, do we do an email?
Yeah, I can type my email into the chat thing.
Awesome. Thanks, Judy.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring up one point, Judy, that we had talked about with the change in our season coming up and knowing how our event schedule might be different. You know, what are some other opportunities such as assessment days, you know, our test days, performance and development opportunities, simulations, seminars, that sort of thing that the coaches can choose to do in place of or as well as to enhance their event season, knowing that our event season is possibly going to look a little different this year?
Well, and I would encourage the coaches to start planning on those things anyways. So you don't know what competitions are going to happen. So if you think that, you know, once your skaters get back on, they've had a good 8 weeks of training or whatever the amount of time is that they'd like, then why don't you plan a simulation at 8 weeks? If a competition actually happens, well, we can do the simulation a week before the competition, right? So
Right.
I would encourage them to start to plan and be a little bit, you know, ingenious or innovative about the things that they may want to do. Simulations, maybe getting a judge to come in and watch, you know, I'm, you know, one judge as opposed to, you know, 30 parents kind of thing. So I think that they're going to have to kind of mix it up, and, you know, the athletes may have an example of something that they could do. Talk to the athletes or the skaters. They're the ones that probably have some good ideas of what they would see as some way for them to plan and prepare and get competition ready, because that's what we want for them.
Absolutely. Awesome. And someone commented here too that they feel judges will be more than happy to do the simulation once everything resumes. They'll be missing skating as well as, you know, just like we all are, and would love to be providing feedback and see the skaters. Alex, I agree with you 100%. I think you're so right. So definitely that would be a great opportunity to get our skaters back in competition mode. Quick question here for one of our coaches. What can you do if your first date expires this summer? So there is a 3-month grace period that State Canada is providing you. So if your first aid expires during this time and you step back on the ice, you will have 3 months before it expires. So you remain in good standing for 3 months after we step back on the ice, and you have the opportunity to complete your first aid. Okay, see if we have any more of these questions. Anything we don't answer, we can answer after the fact. So with some, okay, Lisa, sorry, one more for you, Lisa. With some of the smaller communities, hockey will be a big factor in opening up. Working in your committee, are they looking at a safe for all before the rink will open, or could be gradual by sport?
Yeah. Are you getting sick of my where we really don't know all the answers to that answer? The rinks are not controlled by the provincial government, right? Like they are controlled, and you know, it's back to, I think, you know, David said earlier, the importance of maintaining your own relationship in your community with your rink and understanding that they know, you know, what you can do and what your needs are and all that stuff. What we are trying to advocate for with the ministry is the importance of getting people back to sort of structured physical activity when it's safe. So we are advocating as much as we can to make sure that whatever the province can do to really encourage people to make sure that facilities are up and ready and running, we will. And we are also, I also talk all the time with hockey. So I know with the hockey organization, so I know that they are also working on, you know, what can they do to offer programming that will look different too. So we will yeah, if and when we get more info on that, we'll let you know.
Awesome. Thank you. We are getting some feedback that some coaches would like to see some webinars for the skaters, and those are on our radar as well. We are thinking of that. That's something that we will put in our survey after tonight's webinar, some ideas for skater webinars, if that's something that you think your skaters would be interested in. Also, we have started our Fun Fridays. So we started one last week, and we have another one coming out this Friday. So encourage your skaters to check out our social media. And they can participate in our Fun Fridays. But we will come up with something in our survey this time to see about some ideas if you feel that your skaters would enjoy some webinars from us as well. So at this time, Judy, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You can tell by the questions and all the great information that's so valuable for our skaters and our coaches. So thank you so much for joining us. And thanks, Lisa, for your guidance always and helping to answer all the questions. Thank you, our coaches, for everybody for joining. And we will see you again in a few weeks. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Amanda. Peace.
Thank
Judy.
you.
Thanks,
David.
guys. Thanks, Dave.
Bye-bye.
Dave. Bye.
Thanks, Judy. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks, guys.
Amanda. Thank you, ladies. That was awesome.
Thank you, ladies.
Very much.
Girl.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good job.
Everyone.
Thanks.
How do you end this?